By the way, if you just showed up for the video, or really more so if I just started the video, we're doing the 13.3, 13.4 homework. So, Jack, if I have a rectangular prism beyond just big B times H, I really know that my volume formula, I could instead use, this is like the beginnings of volume. When you were told you find volume by doing, and they really were kind of lying to you because that's only for easy shapes, but it's something times something times something. So this big B is really length times width. And then times your height is just times your height. So our length, width, and height, we're told, are 3, 5, and 15. And that will then compute to our volume. Any questions left on that one? Izzy? Question 4. Volumes of pyramids. So yeah, this merges all that work together, everything we've done this chapter. So, what is the first step? Izzy, I'm going to kind of pick on you a little bit. If I have a pyramid like this, what's the first step that you're thinking in your head? Like, oh, I need to do this before I can start. Yeah, my hexagon at the bottom needs to be divided into triangles. So I'm out of coffee. So, we break this up, and we think that big B, how do I know how many triangles I'm going to have? Casey? How many sides I have? So my hexagon tells me I will have 6 triangles. So then I'm going to use the formula for triangles, which is 1/2 little b, little h. And, of course, you don't have to write all of this work, but it will help you if you do, because the more times you write the formulas, the better you remember them. So now I have to figure out what my little b and little h are for my triangle. Maylee, do you remember how we know our little b and little h, what relationship they have with each other? There's a little symbol that we're looking for. Julia?
A little box that shows that they're...
Yes, you might make yourself a note somewhere. Little b is perpendicular to little h. We're looking for the little box. So for the triangles, that's right here. Tells me that my 5 perpendicular to my 4.3, those are my little b, little h. So I use 5 and 4.3. Any questions up to this point? I'm not using the height of the pyramid because I'm just dealing with the base right now. And actually, this slant height is completely a distractor. If I'm looking for volume, I don't need the slant height. I would need the slant height, though, if I was doing... chain? Yeah, and more specifically, the lateral area is when I use that slant height. So I can compute this. 1/2 of 6, because remember, multiplication's commutative. Order doesn't matter. So I can do, that's 3. Times 5 gives me 15. And I might use a calculator. 4 of 15 times 4.3. Anyone got that for me? Did you punch it in yet, Anthony? 64.5. That's a working number. So I circle it for the time being because I'm going to need it later. Big B, 64.5. I don't have to label it yet because it's a working number. But if you want to, we know that's meters squared because it's area. Now move on to our volume formula. How, Lily, is volume of a pyramid different than a prism? Because on that last problem, we said volume is big B times H. Well, volume here is not just big B times H. We're in 3 dimensions. Reagan?
Isn't it big B times big H times 1/3?
Yeah, it's 1/3. So remember when I filled the pyramid and it filled the prism 3 times? That prism's 3 times the pyramid, or we say the pyramid's 1/3. So you can multiply by 1/3 or divide by 3. Either way, up to you. So I'm going to fill in what I know. 1/3, we computed our big B to be 64.5. And our big H here. Casey, what's our big H here? Ooh. So you probably use the 8. But actually, when we're doing volume, this big H, just like little b, little h, big B, big H have to be perpendicular also. And if I erase a tiny bit, I can see that right here, I have another perpendicular mark showing me that this drop down dotted line of 6.7, that's the height of my pyramid. So be careful, your height of your pyramid must be vertical. And then if we compute that out, anybody get that calculated yet? Shane? Yep. Now what was your label on that? Meters cubed, because it's volume. Sorry that my work kind of got really close to itself there. Meters cubed for volume. Questions on that before I clear it from the smartboard? Volume's easier, but it's not easy. So it's the easier between surface area volume, but it's not easy. You gotta write this out. You gotta be real careful. Check your work. Xavier? 9? Oh, I already did that. All right, no other questions on this one before we move on.
So, you just would put the volume in the box. Just like
Well, your test won't be online, but yeah, if it was asking, you would just, and if it said round to the 10th or round to the 100th, you would pay attention to that. This could honestly be rounded to just 144. I mean, 500ths is not going to make too much of a difference, but it depends on what you're doing, what level of accuracy
you
you
don't have
want.
to explain anything other than just all your like work.
You're not entering this online at all. Yeah, so like if you had this work on your paper, you're good. That is your explanation. So don't think I don't have to explain anything. You did.
Yeah.
You explained it mathematically. Clear. 9. Mr. Morton's actually the name of one of the most popular salt companies, removed dirt from an area in his yard to use as a flower bed. The area measured 3 meters long, 1.3 meters wide, and 0.9 meters deep. If we're not told anything specific, what shape are we going to assume this is? Well, but in 3D, it's not a square or a rectangle. It's not a cube because the dimensions are different. Rectangular prism. So I start by thinking, what is it? It's a prism. It's got a rectangle at the base. So if we want how much dirt, is that volume or is it surface area? Volume. Sadly enough, I think this summer I'm going to have to buy dirt so I can reseed the grass in my backyard. So we've now determined what is the shape and what am I doing with it. So then think, how do I do this? Well, I could use the formulas that we use from class, or I can think actually back to 6th grade. A lot of you should have had this in 6th grade, not every school. But it's just length times width times height, because that length times width is the area of my base. So I just plug in my 3 times 1.3 times 0.9. I'm going to get a fairly small number, but remember that's meters cubed. I don't know why I wrote a 2 instead cubed. So guys, a meter cubed, and this is what's hard. So a cubic meter and a cubic yard are very close. When you order concrete, I was talking to my buddy about this, Randy. I think I've talked to him about Randy before. He's a draftsman. I've accidentally said he's an architect. When you order concrete, you have a minimum order of 3 yards. You're like, oh, 3 yards, that's like 9 feet. No. A yard of concrete. Imagine a yard that way and a yard that way. So like, square space this big, then a yard tall. 3 of those is the minimum order when you order concrete, because it comes in one of those giant trucks that spins, and they have to be able to mix up enough, and there's where ratios come in. You got to mix the right amount of dry concrete mix with the right amount of water, And to do that, they make a minimum order of 3 yards. It's a lot. So when you think about cubic anything, it gets pretty big pretty fast. Does anyone compute this? Do you have this? Yeah, give it to me. 3.15? 3.51. Yeah. It's a big process. You've lost your cap or something. Joe. 5. Thank you for asking about this one. 5. There is a trap door on this question. Grace is going to jump out of her chair. Grace, what's the trap door on this question? Why is that a trap door?
Because then you have to convert that into.
If I could, shoot fireworks out of my hands, I would right now. This question's on the test. It's a different question, like different numbers, but this question's on the test. So please pay attention as we work through this. We must have what before we start working? Anytime, surface area volume, anytime we're doing any of this stuff, what must we have? CJ? Same units. So I can either, and here's my discrepancy or my decision that I have to make, I can either turn my inches into feet, or I can turn my feet into inches. I have to make a choice. There's no right or wrong answer here, but there is what's easier. Julie, do you know which one's easier?
Change the feet to inches, because if you change the inches to feet, then you have point something.
It's always easier to make my units smaller because my numbers get bigger. So I would make yourself a little note that it's easier to go feet to inches than it is inches to feet, but up to you if you think you can remember that. So what conversion factor do I use going feet to inches? Justin?
4 feet by 12.
Yeah. And really, if you want to be technical, we're multiplying it by 12 inches over 1 foot. And this goes over 1, and that does some stoichiometry and gives you 48 inches over 1, which is just 48 inches, which most of us probably already knew. But never think the math is too easy. Always think about it for a second. Make sure you did it right. I've made plenty of simple mistakes myself. Now we can talk about how much volume will fit inside of it. So, and they do make fish tanks like this. I've had people in the past be like, you made this up just for math. No, there are fish tanks with triangle bases. So now we still have a prism, because we're told that. But, Hayden, what kind of prism? Triangular. How's that change my process? Yeah. Ooh, so now when I go to find big B, since it's triangular, I now use my triangle formula, 1/2 little b times little h. My little b and little h, Brandon, must be what with each other? They must be perpendicular. So it doesn't actually have the box, but we can go ahead and determine, yeah, that line has no reason to be there unless it's the height. Here's the other trick. This was your 4 feet, which means this is your 4 feet. It looks like the dotted line continues straight. That is a vantage point or a perspective issue. Your eyes are tricking you. So imagine that you have this 3D triangular prism, and you're looking at it at an angle where this line coming down and this line that's perpendicular to the base end up how you look at it in a straight line with each other. Now you could fix that by turning your shape, right? You could look at it differently, or you could lay it down, or you could do something with it, but we can't. We're stuck on the screen. So I did this intentionally because I don't know how those state tests are going to be set up. But you got to be careful, all because this looks like it's one line doesn't mean it is. This cuts off the base triangle right here and tells me that 4 inches belongs to that triangle. It is not part of that dotted line. So when I go to do my big B, CJ, what's my little b, little h?
Little b is 5 and little h is 5.
Yep, they got to be perpendicular. What's 5 times 4? 20, half of that.
Good morning, Ryan Scharf. Please come to the office. Ryan Scharf to the office, please. Thank you.
Questions on how we found big B? This is the last day that we're doing classwork on chapter 13. So today's the day. Like, if you got questions, please don't sit on them. Really?
For 10.
Well, we're not done with this one yet, but just questions on how we found the area of the base. There's not much to do to finish it, but we do have one more step to do to finish it. So this 48 is actually my height. That 10 is really my big B. Joe, what do I need to do with these values that I have in order to get my volume? Yeah, because I have a prism, not a pyramid, prism, just big B times H. So, 10 times 48, well, what's 10 times anything? Moving decimals, this becomes 480 inches cubed, guys. It's volume. Always second guess yourself on your labels. Is it area for 2 dimensions? Volume for 3 dimensions? Any last questions on this? This one, like this problem specifically. Yeah.
What's the answer?
That's it.
No, it's multiple choice.
So, this is not actually asking you to find the final answer, right? What I want to see on your paper is the work getting you all the way to the final answer. I put the multiple choice in there to clue you into the trap door. So if you hadn't realized that that's feet and shouldn't be, that's where the multiple choice comes in. Which one of those deals with the fact that the 4 feet had to be converted and turned into a new value? Joe? Little b, little h, divided by 2, which is your times 1/2, times the height of 48. This is your big B times h. That's your volume. So if you couldn't figure that out on your own, that's why I had that 48 in there, for you to be like, wait, where did 48 come from? Especially when you have multiple choice. Analyze why the... Now, it could just be a distractor. It could be made up, they could be wrong. But if you see a number that you're like, that's not in my image, figure out why they might be using it. Other questions on that? Aside from the fact that the answer is C. But I don't care about the answer being C. I care about seeing your work to find your volume. Because on the test, you're finding the volume of the fish tank. And that would lead into chemical balancing, what fish you could have in there. Like, it would really lead a lot of information about your fish tank. I talked about Matt, my buddy who sold coral. You can seriously, I had a buddy who raised, like, you grow coral, and he sold it hundreds of dollars a piece. No joke. Understanding the science of a fish tank, especially saltwater, you can make some money. They also had an electric eel. I never was bold enough to reach in that tank, but he said it was real, like, will shock you. Maylee?
Oh, I just have
Yeah.
I have 2 questions actually. I did number 2, but I don't think I did it right.
Let's check it out. Thank you for asking about a surface area one. I was waiting to see if anyone was ever going to get us back to surface area. So this is a really good one to do because I think 1 is surface area also, but it's a bit easier because the base is a square. So number 2, we think back to our surface area formula, and for a pyramid, the only difference is instead of having 2 bases, I've got 1 base. but I still have lateral area. How I find lateral area changes slightly. This is where people keep getting confused. So, triangular pyramid, right? So, triangular pyramid. Let's start, because whether we're doing volume or surface area, it's easiest to start with big B. So let's start by dealing with this. If I can unfold it. I can't unfold it. This base triangle. And then we'll deal with everything else. So, big B. Aiden, what's my formula for area of a triangle? Those aren't the values that we use. I agree, but those aren't what we call them. Ooh, we don't call it width. Somebody help him out. Just help him out. Just tell him. We call it the base and the height of our pyramid. So we're looking for a base and a height of the base that we can do half our little b times little h. So please write that down. That would be great. Helps get it in our memory. So they have to be perpendicular. We find out our base here of 6. And the height of the base, not the height of the pyramid, the height of the base, 5.2. You don't need a calculator. Half of my 6 is 3. 3 times 5. 15. 3 times 0.2. What's 3 times 2? 6. So it's just going to be 0.6, just 15.6. Break up that multiplication. Distribute to those values. And that would be centimeters squared if we care, but it's a working number, so we'll come back for that. We still need lateral area, and this is where people get all screwy. It's tough. This is where it gets hard. So that lateral area is dealing with these 3 triangles around the shape. And since they're all triangles, I know that they all use half. So I really would have half times little b times little h, right? Each triangle, half little b little h, times 3 of them, because there's 3 of them in this shape. The easier way that we deal with that, instead of using this bigger formula, is to say, what if I put them all together? Remember when we said if I cut them off and I put one up, one down, one up, one down, I can make one bigger shape? And we talked about the area of that shape being 1/2. I've had people like calling me and texting me, and all you have to do is read above where you're at on your notes. We have P times cursive L. That's the base perimeter and slant height. This is exactly what's in your notes, and that's why I'm going to write it the same way. But that's your base perimeter and your slant height. Casey? So do you know our base perimeter?
I think it's 6.
That's one of the edges, but for base perimeter, we got to go all the way around. So for perimeter first, you're getting ahead of me a little bit. For perimeter, that would be 18. Now, if you were up here doing just one of the triangles, you could do half times 6 times 13 and then multiply that by 3. But we just kind of merge it all together, and we did the times 3 on the 6. So I already did the times 3. Then, I agree, times that slant height of 13. Questions on how we got that? The trouble here is you have options, right? I could look at just one of these triangles and then multiply by 3. That's another option. If you want to do that, you'd be taking this route. But if you follow what we did in our notes, our shortcut method, we're taking this route. Half of 18? 9. 9 times 10? 90. 9 times 3? Put them together. 117, again, centimeters squared. Then, last thing to find total. Yeah, just add them up. All I do is add them together. I get 32? You gotta have a label or it essentially doesn't say anything. Emily, how is it at Linworth? What if you turn something in without labels on it?
I know that there have been times when I've turned something in without labels, and I've just gotten the whole question taken off. So.
And like, but your math was right?
But my math was right. Sometimes it kind of depends on the teacher.
Yeah.
But, there are a lot of high school teachers who will basically not give you any credit for a question if you don't have a label, because it doesn't mean anything. It's like if you just have 132.6, it's like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean?
I always say dogs, cats, pizzas. What are you referencing? Are you counting dogs or cats or ordering pizzas?
Right.
And power, right? So even if you had centimeters, the power is actually what communicates what it is. Because if it was just centimeters, it's like how long my arm is.
Yeah.
If it's centimeters squared, it's how much carpet we have. If it's centimeters cubed, it's how much I need in an IV to save my life. Very different. Ordering carpet and ordering medicine. Yeah.
So for this, I don't like typing it into the answer. I don't know how to like put the square.
So you won't need to worry about that here. We'll go over that for the kind of like training of the air test. We don't take our math test till after spring break, but if you care, that would actually, if you want to know how to type it on any computer, you would say 132.6 centimeter, and you could leave a space if you want. Then we use the caret, which is actually the shift function of the 6. So kind of like that little up arrow. That tells you to the power of, and then you just put a 2.
Oh, okay.
Or other programs have what's called a superscript. So like if you're in Word, so let's say I wanted to type that in here. 132.6. Ooh, my computer's mad at me. So you can go into the like font settings, and there's subscript, which make it tiny on the bottom. Superscript makes it tiny on the top.
Okay.
So you would use a superscript there. Casey, what's up? Yeah. I'm down. I'm ready. We're moving on.
I think it's question 8.
Ocho. I was thinking about this last night at Bed Bath & Beyond. There's stacks of towels. How many towels are in that wall? They have one of those, like, it's like an entire wall with just really fancy folded towels. It also took me back to when I worked at Old Navy and I had to fold jeans. And you get, like, this whole stack, perfect wall. 10 minutes later, you walk back and it's, like, trashed. Who?
I hate the way they do it.
Old Navy folds their pants really interesting because when the crotch part sticks out, they fold it back in and the stacks end up like leaning. So it's really, if you ever get a job places and they train you how to fold, I argued with my manager that we were folding incorrectly. So Daryl works as a stock boy. He notices that a 3-foot high rectangular box is labeled having a volume of 60 cubic feet. So we've got a box. All we know is it's 3 feet tall, and its volume is 60 cubic feet. So, we know our volume formula. This is one of those times like back in our circles unit where sometimes we got to work backwards to figure out what we're actually doing. I know that volume is actually equal to big B times H in a prism. It's a box, so a box is a prism. Bless you. They don't mean cube. They just mean any kind of box shape, which we've come to nickname a prism as a box. And we know that this equals 60. We also know one other key piece here. Is it? The height, which is? So what we really have is big B times 3 equals 60. How do I use my inverse operations to isolate that big B, Casey? We can divide both sides. Don't forget to notate. Like if you were writing out directions, you want to make sure that you say both sides. And we get B is equal to 20 feet squared. So we need to find options over there that will give me an area of 20 feet squared. And I'm going to leave that to you because you should be able to figure out which of those choices would make sense. Casey? Yeah. We can capture this and move on. Okay, I feel bad if we don't go all the way. What's our answer here? Anthony? Yeah, because 5 times 4 will give me 20. This would give me 24, this would give me 21, and this would give me 12. So B, C, D do not work. A is my only choice. Sorry, Casey, your next one?
Question 12.
12. So this is real. Like, these situations actually happen. My in-laws own a transport company, which like a trucking company, and you either drive a flatbed stake body, like if you see with the big steel cables and stuff, so it doesn't have like a van behind it, or you drive with the trailer behind you and it's enclosed. Right? A lot of those are 53 feet long. You can imagine that's super long. So this trailer is a smaller trailer, 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, 8 feet pretty wide, and 10 feet high. So a gallon of paint can cover 440 square feet. We need to repaint the whole interior of the trailer. It's a fun thing to do on a hot summer day because it ends up being like 130 degrees in those trailers. No joke. So I could think about this in a few different ways. I could think about, what if I'm just trapped in the room and I got to paint that wall, then I got to paint that wall, then that wall, then that wall, then the floor, and then the wall behind me. Or you can realize the area of the insides of the wall is the same as the areas of the outsides. Because the area on this side of the wall is the same as the area looking from the other way. So really, even though I'm looking at the inside, what am I solving here? Total surface area, right? Now, some people are like, why would you paint the floor? Those trailers are made out of wood, and a lot of times you got to protect that stuff from like the weather and chemicals and things like that. So you paint it with stuff like Kills, where it seals the wood. So you really would paint the floor, the ceiling, to everything. So we just want to calculate surface area. What would the trailer, is that a pyramid or a prism? It's a prism, right? It doesn't go to a peak, a point. It goes just straight up using rectangles. So my surface area formula for a prism, we've got 2 bases plus the lateral area. Now that's if I use the formula. I could also just match up walls. So I'll do the other method here in a second. But if I use the formula, let's draw this out to get an idea. They said it's 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 10 feet tall. So not a pretty drawing. But if I think about the base, well, if it's 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, my base rectangle uses the 20 by 8. Should change color. So big B is just that 20 times 8. It's 160. All of my walls, that one, that one, that one, and that one, end up making what shape if I look at all of them combined? Ooh, not cube. Yeah, one big rectangle, right? Because that rectangle and that rectangle and that rectangle and this rectangle can all unfold to one giant rectangle. So that, and some people are having issues with this. I talked to a couple people last night on their homework. That's our perimeter of the base, so that I unfold all those rectangles times the height, the distance between my bases. So that perimeter is the 20 plus the 8 plus the 20 again plus the 8 again. That's all 4 rectangles. I have one that's 20, one that's 8, one that's 20, one that's 8, and they all share the same height. How tall are they? 10 feet, right? That's how tall the trailer is. 20, 40, 56 times 10. Anything is times 10 just moves decimals. So this becomes a lateral area of, 560. Ooh, not yet. Not ever, actually, here, because we're doing area. So remember, area flat space is squared. This is feet. This is also feet squared. And last thing I gotta do I only paint the floor? I also gotta paint the ceiling. So I gotta double this. So when I double 160, I get 320. I add these together, we get 880 feet squared. Now, the other way to do this, and some of you will think this is easier, but it only works for prisms. Stick with me. The other way to do this. Deleted my picture. So think about the picture up there on the TV. I step into the trailer and I'm looking down at the front, like the wall that's up against the truck. Right? That has the dimensions, 8 feet wide, 10 feet tall. So I'm going to say that's the front, 8 by 10. That wall would have an area of 80. I look to the left. I've got a wall that's 20 feet long, 10 feet tall. So my left is 20 by 10. Then I look at the floor. My base is 20 feet long by what? Instead of 10, it uses the... Notice that I used each number twice. I used 20 twice, I used 10 twice, I used 8 twice. What I've done now is painted the front, the left, and the bottom. How much of the job have I completed? Half of it. Because I still got to paint the right, the top, and the back. All you got to do is double each of them. Total it all up, you'll get 880. Different way to get there, same destination. Maybe. Hopefully, probably, maybe. Yeah, same thing. So we can either use the formula process or we can use the match faces process. Huh? Sure, let's use the match faces process. So if we call this my front, this my right, and like the bottom, my big B. Well, my big B uses the length width. So length width, 510. My front uses the length height. So that would be 515. And this doesn't look right, by the way. Never trust what it looks like. It is not drawn to scale. And my right uses width height. Again, look at how I've used each number twice. When I do the match faces method, I've used each number twice. So this is 75, this is 150. Add those up, double it, because we only actually have done half of the faces, and that is how we wrap that one. Yep. So because the base matches with the top, I double that. Because the front matches with the back, I double it. And because the right matches with the left, I double it. I get 100, 150, and 300. So then I add all these up, and that will be the total surface area. No, you are going to need that when we come to take the mastery. So my question to you is, when would we like to take the mastery? Start Thursday, so we have Friday to work if we need. So you need your up to 13, 13, 1 and 2 done, 13, 3 and 4 done on paper in order to take the mastery. So we'll start that Thursday. So tomorrow we'll be in 14-1. You don't have those notes, you're all good yet. But make sure you have all that practice work done. Please let me know if I can help you with anything. Thank you guys very much. Have a good day.